You wear that kind of dress to work? She laughed, glancing at my worn cotton dress with a look of disdain. I just smiled. She didn't know I was the one reviewing her job application. My name is Elaine Morris. I'm 52 years old and have been living alone in a small Brooklyn apartment since my divorce 5 years ago. I don't care about high heels or designer dresses anymore. I don't need to impress anyone. I'm the head of human resources at a major media corporation in New York, a place where expensive suits, Starbucks coffee, and fake smiles often overshadow real competence. I used to be the best-dressed person in the office. But after losing everything in a failed marriage and learning some hard truths about human worth, I chose a simpler life. The dress she mocked today? I bought it at a thrift store for $14. But it's clean, it fits well, and most importantly, it reminds me that I no longer need to define myself by how I look. And then she walked in, a young woman with sleek, straightened hair, a tight-fitting dress, flashy heels, and a look that was equal parts confidence and defiance. She was applying for a digital media position. She sneered at me right there in the waiting area, having no idea I was the one who would decide whether she got the job. I've seen her type before. But today, I decided not to stay silent. That morning, we had 4 candidates make it to the final interview round for the digital media position, a role the executives called young and dynamic. They wanted someone who was trend-savvy, knew TikTok, could write catchy captions, and help build the brand's image with Gen Z. I, on the other hand, was looking for someone with strategic thinking, a strong work ethic, and genuine teamwork skills. Jessica Turner, 27 years old, was urgently recommended by the internal marketing team because she had interned with us for 3 months last year. They called her a rising star. Me? I reviewed her resume and saw nothing but buzzwords: multitasker, passionate about creativity, proficient in all social platforms, but no depth, no concrete results. Just another copy-paste resume like hundreds of others. I sat quietly in the waiting area, no name tag, no designated seat, because I wanted to observe the candidates when they thought I was just an admin assistant. The first 3 greeted me with friendly eyes. But when it was Jessica's turn, she walked in and glanced over me like I didn't exist. Then, as her name was called for the interview, she turned to the girl next to her and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. Hope there aren't any HR ladies in there dressed like it's the 90s. Total buzzkill. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I used to be that young woman once. I thought I was invincible. I judged people by appearances. I was wrong. But today, I sat there not to teach her a lesson. I sat to let her own behavior determine her future. Because in this country, opportunities may be given, but real value is what decides which doors actually open. Jessica entered the interview room with the confidence of someone expecting to be praised. Her eyes scanned the room, seeming more interested in what people were wearing and how old they were than in preparing to answer any questions. Sitting beside me was Mark Gibson, 42, Director of Marketing, the same guy who once said he wanted to hire someone with TikTok energy. He'd also mentioned that I was too serious about HR processes, so I let him ask the first question. Jessica, if you had 24 hours to run a viral campaign for a product with 0 ad budget, what would you do? Jessica laughed and leaned forward. Oh, easy. I'd shoot a trending POV-style video with a popular TikTok sound, write a controversial caption, something like, "This is what you need if you've been single too long." Then, boom. Viral. No big deal. Mark nodded, clearly impressed. I wasn't. I flipped through her file, scanning the campaign experience section. No specific metrics. No budgets. No performance reports. When it was my turn, I looked her directly in the eyes. Jessica, during your internship last year, you participated in the Spring 20 media campaign. According to the report I read, you posted content without approval, which led us to lose a sponsor. Can you explain what happened? The energy in the room shifted. She paused slightly, then quickly regained her composure. Well, I was following my creative instincts. I thought the content would make a strong impact, so I acted quickly. Maybe it was a bit bold, but I believe this industry needs boldness. I nodded and jotted down a note in her file. Not a single word of accountability. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." She left the room with a smug smile, clearly thinking she'd nailed the interview. But as the door closed, Mark turned to me for the first time, unsure. "She's got potential, but kind of arrogant. What do you think?" I replied calmly. "I think, sometimes, people need to learn the value of respect before they learn how to work in media." That very afternoon, I drafted the rejection email. The reason was short and to the point. Not a cultural fit. The interview ended at 11:45 a.m. By 1 p.m., Jessica had already sent me a follow-up email with the bold subject line. "Thank you for the amazing opportunity. Looking forward to working with your company." Below her signature, she added the quote, "Marketing is not about data, it's about vibes." I stared at that line. Vibes? A media company managing multimillion-dollar budgets cannot run on vibes. I didn't reply. Instead, I finalized her rejection and sent the official notice at 2:06 p.m. by the book. 3 short lines. No explanation. No debate. At 3:12 p.m., I received another email from Jessica. This time, it was longer, and the tone had changed. I was really surprised to be rejected. "I thought I had the right energy, and I've worked at the company before. Could you give me a more specific reason? I'm genuinely interested in the position." I didn't respond. U.S. labor laws don't require employers to provide detailed explanations for rejection decisions. And I knew any reason I gave could be twisted, challenged, or worse, turned into unnecessary drama on LinkedIn or other social platforms. For 23 p.m., I saw a new post on LinkedIn from Jessica Turner. A photo of her sitting in a coffee shop, captioned, "Today, I was rejected from a dream position by an outdated system that doesn't value fresh thinking. But I won't back down. I'll come back, stronger and more in tune with the times." The post racked up over 300 likes in just a few hours. Several comments came from young professionals she'd worked with, supporting her as a victim of an obsolete system. One person even wrote, "Watch out for those old HR ladies. They hate anyone who dresses better than they do." I read every word. I wasn't angry. I just felt sad. Not because I was misunderstood, but because so many young people have confused recklessness with confidence. And I found myself wondering, can I change that? Or should I quietly step back? But then, another email appeared. From the CEO. Sent directly to me. "Elaine, I heard there was a bit of noise around today's interview process. Everything okay? Do you want to talk?" I knew then, this wasn't over. That evening, I sat alone in my 12th floor apartment, where I've lived for nearly 15 years since the divorce. The city lights streamed in through the window, cold and distant, mirroring how I felt inside. I opened my laptop and reread Jessica's file. The words passionate about creativity, entrepreneurial spirit, trend savvy, popped out at me, repeating like a younger version of myself whispering back. I used to be just like her. I walked into interviews wearing a discount store dress, but with my chin held high, full of ambition. I, too, was once labeled by older colleagues as impulsive, impatient. The question kept echoing in my mind. Was I too harsh on her? Am I looking at Jessica the same way others once looked at me? I remembered my early days in the industry. One time, I entered the wrong numbers in a client report, and the company lost an $80,000 contract. I cried for 3 days. But my department head at the time, Mr. Thomas Gilmore, didn't fire me. Instead, he gave me 3 more months of probation and made me present my lessons learned to the entire department. "You're young, but if you don't learn from your mistakes, age won't save your career." I've carried that sentence with me for 2 decades. Now I'm Elaine Carter, 52 years old, Director of Human Resources, with the power to reject or elevate someone's career with a single email. But I'm also someone who once stood on the other side, just hoping for a second chance. The issue is Jessica never apologized, never took ownership. And even after being rejected, she went online to attack the company instead of reflecting on herself. So, should I give her a second chance? Or is the silence itself the lesson she needs? I typed a few lines in response to the CEO, then deleted them. Typed again. Deleted again. By midnight, I still hadn't hit send. The next morning, I walked into the office with a strange feeling. Not anger. Not resentment. More like doubt. In my inbox was an email from the legal department. Should we respond to Jessica Turner's LinkedIn post? Some of the language could be considered defamatory. Please advise. I froze. American society today has changed. Debates no longer unfold in boardrooms. They erupt online, where the loudest voice often wins. I checked my phone. Jessica's post had surpassed 1,200 likes. The latest comment read, "I used to work at that company. HR was awful, unfriendly. The whole environment was full of negative energy." No one mentioned that Jessica had once posted unapproved content, costing the company a major sponsor. No one brought up the fact that she never apologized. The only narrative spreading was, a young woman rejected for being different. I knew, if the company responded, it would spiral into drama. But if I stayed silent, she controlled the story. And if I spoke out, would I be losing a part of myself? I remembered something my father once told me when I was a child. He was a high school teacher. You can't control how others tell your story. But you can control how you live, so you don't fear being misrepresented. I sat down and wrote an internal report. No emotion. No judgment. Just the facts, quoting the original campaign report, outlining the hiring decision process. I attached a note to legal. No public response. Don't turn a small issue into a headline. Then I wondered, am I hiding? Or am I protecting the integrity of a profession where silence is sometimes the strongest voice? As I walked past the hallway, I saw a young intern nervously knocking on an executive's door. I stopped and quietly asked, "Are you okay?" She gave me a hesitant smile. "I'm just afraid. I'm not good enough to stay here." I looked into her eyes. The same eyes I had 20 years ago. And it hit me, fairness isn't treating everyone the same. It's knowing when to be firm and when to show grace. 3 weeks later, the hiring committee called for another emergency meeting. The CEO, Mr. Richardson, personally requested my presence. The air in the room was thick, like the moments before a storm. On the screen was another LinkedIn post from Jessica. They rejected me because I wasn't like them, but I don't need to be like them to succeed. Attached was a podcast interview video in which she mentioned the company by name, openly, without hesitation. The video had over 80,000 views. An external PR agency had emailed, offering crisis management services. The CEO looked at me. "Elaine, what do you think?" I sat up straight. For the first time in years, I felt like more than someone who just screened resumes. I was someone who needed to speak on behalf of an entire generation. I answered, without hesitation. I don't want to sue her. I don't want to turn this into a generational war. But I do think it's time we told the truth. Properly. I proposed a post, written by me, under the company's name, explaining the hiring process, our workplace values, and why a simple thank you can never replace responsibility. At first, PR pushed back. Will anyone even care? I replied, people always care about the truth if it's told with kindness and sincerity. I wrote the post in 2 days. It was concise, calm, and didn't attack anyone. I simply shared our side, the importance of professionalism, how the company invests in young talent, but does not tolerate disrespect. I included the story of my own first interview, walking in with a cheap dress but ambitious eyes. I was given a chance, but I also knew how to humble myself and learn. The post went live on Monday. No promotion, no hashtags. But within 48 hours, it had over 3,000 shares. An anonymous account commented, "Thank you for speaking like a mother, not a cold HR rep." I don't know who wrote that, but I felt my heart soften, not because I had one, but because I hadn't stayed silent. I didn't fight Jessica with authority. I responded with character. A week after my post, HR started receiving emails, but not from the press or lawyers. They came from young employees working in the company. One new hire wrote, "I read your post. I used to think HR only cared about rules, not people. But now I understand. Thank you for teaching me that without making me feel small." A product manager left a handwritten note in my inbox. I interviewed an intern the other day. He was 15 minutes late. I was about to toss his resume. But then I thought, maybe I should ask why first. Thank you, Elaine. I realized then that my post wasn't just a response to a PR mess. It was a reaffirmation of a fading workplace value, respect, patience, and honest conversation between generations. I no longer chose silence. In the next leadership meeting, I proposed a new initiative. Bridge the Gap, a generational mentorship program connecting young employees with those who had over 15 years of experience. Not a training course. Just open conversations, no grading, no agendas, where both sides could share stories and listen. The CEO asked me, "Do you think the younger generation will listen?" I replied, "If we talk to them like real adults, not just bosses, they'll listen. Because deep down, everyone wants to be understood, not just instructed." The program was approved for a trial run at 2 branches. In less than 2 months, voluntary turnover among employees under 30 dropped by 18%. The PR team suggested we promote it publicly, but I declined. I'm not doing this for recognition. I'm doing it so no one ends up in Jessica's shoes, and no one has to choose silence the way I once thought I had to. The girl who once mocked my dress may never know who I really am, but it doesn't matter anymore. I've found my voice again, not through power, but through principled kindness. 3 months later, the Bridge the Gap program expanded across the company. At first, I only hoped it would ease generational friction. But the results exceeded expectations. We received feedback from all departments, from longtime employees to new hires, that these informal conversations helped them truly understand one another. Something so simple had sparked deep cultural change. Misunderstandings, frustrations between generations, they slowly faded. HR's turnover rate dropped by 20%. More importantly, some senior leaders began attending the conversations, not to give orders, but to listen. But not everything was perfect. The company began paying closer attention to Jessica. Though she continued to speak out, the tone of public reaction shifted. With more negative responses emerging, she gradually became seen as a symbol of immaturity in professional conduct. Within a month, Jessica began struggling to find new job opportunities. Companies started looking into her history. As for me, despite the recognition, I still woke up some mornings with a vague, unshakable feeling inside. A quiet question lingered. Did I really do the right thing? Right? Did I hurt her too much? These questions still linger in my mind, making it hard for me to fully feel at peace with my decision. One day, Jessica sent me a short email. "I don't know where I went wrong, but I want to thank you. Not because you helped me, but because you gave me the chance to understand myself." I didn't know if she had truly changed or was just trying to escape accountability. But I realized that no one could teach her that lesson except herself. The lesson I learned was this: sometimes tough decisions don't lead to immediate results, but they pave the way for a deeper transformation than we can see at first glance. Neither Jessica nor I have reached the end of our journey. But I believe we've both learned something essential. Growing up isn't about being flawless. It's about the ability to face our mistakes and learn from them. A year later, I was still sitting in the conference room, but this time, I wasn't just an observer. The Bridge the Gap program had been a resounding success, becoming a vital part of the company's culture. And yet, I started to feel something strange, like I had done everything right, but still didn't feel comfortable with where I was. People started calling me a changemaker. I got praise from upper management, from employees, even from a few partners. But deep down, I couldn't shake a vague, nagging feeling. What was the cost of all this change? Was I really living the life I wanted, or just doing the job others expected of me? One morning, while preparing for a strategic meeting with the executive board, I received a message from Jessica. I've landed a new job. This time, I won't repeat my old mistakes. But I wanted to thank you one last time for giving me the chance to reflect. Maybe people like you really do know how to change others. My emotions were complicated. I felt like I had won, but not in the way I imagined. I hadn't thought about myself in so long. Only now did I realize that true change isn't just about shifting organizations or other people. It's about knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. I decided to enroll in a course on business leadership, one that focused not just on strategic thinking, but on leading with heart. I wanted to better understand myself and the reasons behind my actions. And I also made another decision. After everything, I couldn't keep working at a company where I no longer saw myself. I was going to resign. That decision didn't come from anger or frustration. It came from a realization. My career couldn't be built solely on external success. I needed to do something that felt meaningful and alive to me. That day, I stood at my desk, staring at the stacks of papers and reports waiting for my signature. Everything I had done, from developing the Bridge the Gap program to attending endless meetings, now felt like external achievements that no longer excited me. I picked up the phone and called my direct manager, Mr. Richardson. His voice was full of expectation when he answered, but I said calmly, I think it's time for me to find a different path. I'm going to resign. There was a long pause. Then he replied, his voice tinged with surprise. Elaine, are you sure? You've done an excellent job here, and there are still so many opportunities ahead. I paused, looking out the window. The busy city outside no longer felt draining. Instead, I saw clearly that I'd been living a life I never chose. I'm sure. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had. But now I need to make a change so I can live true to who I am. It was definitely a hard decision, but I knew it was the right one. For far too long, I'd been working for others, not for myself. I couldn't keep living as a cog in a machine, without a voice, without a purpose of my own. A few days later, I walked out of the office for the last time, not with a sense of failure, but with a sense of relief. I felt like someone ready to start over, free in a way I had never known before. But before I left, I got one last message from Jessica. Just a short note. Elaine, I've learned something very important from you. Not about work or skills, but about how to live a meaningful life. I smiled, realizing that no matter where life takes us, the hardest decisions often carry the most powerful lessons. I didn't know exactly what my future would look like, but I knew one thing for certain. I was finally living my life, a life I had chosen. When I walked out of that office door for the final time, I wasn't just someone who resigned. I was someone who had taken back control of her life. And I knew now, only when we live true to ourselves can we truly change the world. A year has passed since I resigned, and now, looking back on the journey, I feel a profound difference. In the early days after leaving the company, I faced a lot of uncertainty and anxiety. Could I succeed again? Could I find a new path I truly loved? But over time, I realized that real change doesn't just come from a job or a new environment. It comes from within. I started taking mindful leadership courses and classes on personal development. I learned to listen to myself more and stopped letting work or other people's expectations dictate my life. The ability to take ownership of my life has been the greatest lesson of all. When you work in an environment where you don't feel truly seen, you begin to lose your creativity, your passion. But when you start living according to what you truly want, you'll feel as though you can change the entire world. One day, I ran into Jessica again. She was no longer the woman I had once coached through the Bridge the Gap program. She was now a strong, confident woman who had even been promoted in her career. We sat down to talk about life and work. She shared that she had applied many of the lessons she'd learned from me in her own life. But then she said something that made me stop and think. Thank you, Elaine. But I believe what you really taught me is this: no one can change your life for you. That power comes from within. That was the moment I realized change doesn't always come from helping others. Sometimes it starts by helping yourself first. I couldn't change anyone else, but I could change myself. And that, I've come to see, is the most important thing. Since that day, I've not only found freedom in my work, I've also found freedom in my personal life. I'm no longer confined by society's expectations or superficial definitions of success. I've started to rediscover my passion, live by my own values, and stop being afraid of change. Change is never easy, but it's an essential part of life. The difficult decisions, the challenges, they've all helped me grow a little more each day. And now I understand. Life is a journey of transformation, and only when we're willing to embrace change can we truly discover who we are. Looking back on my journey, I realize there's no such thing as an easy path. But every step, no matter how tough or uncertain, has led me to something far more meaningful. True freedom isn't about living up to other people's expectations. It's about owning your life and living it on your own terms. When I resigned, I didn't just walk away from a job. I walked away from a version of myself that had been buried under societal pressures and expectations I no longer believed in. But when I started over, when I began living in alignment with my true values, I realized something profound. Only when we truly understand ourselves can we begin to change the world around us. This journey hasn't just taught me about career or success. It's taught me that every decision, big or small, has to come from the heart. And when you choose the path of passion and truth, you'll find joy, freedom, and fulfillment, things that can't be measured by money or status. I remember those early days when I was grappling with the decision to resign, the anxiety, the uncertainty. I thought I might lose everything, but in reality, I gained something far more valuable: myself. I've learned that life rarely goes as planned, and sometimes the moments that seem like setbacks turn out to be the most important turning points of all. Each of us has a hidden strength to shape and transform our own lives. The key is having the courage to step out of your comfort zone and choose the path that feels right for you. And when you find that courage, you'll realize nothing is impossible. Today, I'm no longer someone watching from the sidelines. I'm standing on my own 2 feet, ready to face whatever challenges come my way, with the firm belief that change begins within. And if you can change yourself, you can change the world.